What's up, everybody? If you want to join the greatest online Star Wars community, the FANDOM MENACE, make sure you hit that subscribe button before today's video starts, so you don't miss out on any updates and you're always the first to know when our newest videos go live.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
Over the weekend, I pre-ordered 2 of the newest waves of X-Men figures from Hasbro. I got Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Iceman, Mr. Sinister, and more. Out of the dozen figures I bought, the one I was most excited for is Storm, former leader of the X-Men, and all around a great character. Why am I telling you this? Because when you send stuff to the P.O. Box, 5069 Cincinnati, Ohio 45205, I don't want doubles. In all seriousness, I'm using this anecdote to illustrate a point. Stay with me here. There's a myth going around. You may have heard about it. It goes something like, comic book fans are sexist, the movies oppress women, they need to be the strongest. I don't know the exact wording. I'm paraphrasing here, but you get the gist. And I know you've heard it all before, ad nauseum. There's a culture war going on in our entertainment, and geek culture seems to be the prime target. First it was the video games, then the comic books, and now Star Wars and the comic book films. In the case of comic books, it was a losing battle. Sales are at an all-time low as publishers continue to push stories and ideologies that don't appeal to anyone. They tried it with Star Wars, and the combination of bad films and forced politics, we see Star Wars has never been so reviled. That brings us to comic book films, and we're on the precipice of their collapse. Now you're probably thinking that I'm crazy saying this as Avengers Endgame is inching closer and closer to Avatar's worldwide record, but there's a great disturbance in the Force, and comic book films, especially those in the MCU, could self-destruct very, very soon. Take a trip back to February of this year, and the name on everyone's lips was Captain Marvel. Or Brie Larson, if you're not into the whole brevity thing. Now normally the build-up to an MCU film is met with genuine excitement as fans get closer to another chapter in the Avengers saga. In the case of Captain Marvel, controversy was her middle name as each day something new and terrible came to our attention, and at the end of the day, while the film made money, it was forgettable and sits near the bottom of the MCU on Rotten Tomatoes, the very website that ditched its integrity to protect this film. But this video isn't about Captain Marvel. It goes deeper. In April 2019, for those watching in the future, Marvel released Avengers Endgame, and as we stated earlier in the video, the film was inching closer and closer to becoming the biggest film of all time. It was pretty damn good, a bit of a decline from Infinity War, but a great conclusion to the MCU as a whole. After the film came out, all of the talk wasn't about who died or the logistics of the snap. No, all of the talk about Endgame pertained to one scene in particular, the girl power moment. Cringe was the perfect word to describe it, but if that word is too millennial for you, try clumsy, awkward, inept, unskillful, graceless, or, my other go-to, heavy-handed. Simply put, the scene was terrible, and it didn't belong in the film. Some have named it Captain Marvel and Her Amazing Friends, and some call it Karen and the Great Manager Call. No matter what you call it, this scene seems to be the most talked about. Not I Love You 3000, not I Am Inevitable, hell, even the Ant-Man Thanos Destroyer of Anus meme has died down, but this one keeps going. Personally, I don't like the scene because it's redundant. In Infinity War, there was a similar scene where Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, and Michonne from The Walking Dead had a moment with Proxima Midnight, the She's Not Alone scene, and it was awesome. Action-packed, a bit gory, and at the end of it, funny. But above all else, it was logical. The Endgame equivalent felt forced and out of place. It being 2019, if you criticize the scene, you're a bad person. It also being 2019, once is never enough. As of this recording, X-Men Dark Phoenix is out in theaters, and this film, much like Avengers, has a go-go girl power moment. And it's falling on deaf ears because no one is going to see it. Both Avengers Endgame and X-Men Dark Phoenix are guilty of the same thing, pandering to an audience that doesn't like your product and giving hollow lip service in the process. This isn't just a fandom menace observation or even a geek culture one. No, this problem, and yes, it's a problem for a multitude of reasons that we'll cover later, is being picked up by IndieWire, and the woman writing the article is not happy. Dark Phoenix has a pandering girl power moment that diminishes its most progressive quality. Avengers Infinity War and Dark Phoenix may not have a lot in common, but they do share one annoying proclivity. Shoehorning in an off-kilter moment meant to bolster the genre's lackluster treatment of its female characters with pandering shots and cheap lines that don't have much to do with actually what's happening on screen. I'd like to cut in for a moment and ask the writer how the genre disrespects the female characters. Even if we just stick with the MCU, Black Widow is shown to be incredibly smart and resourceful. Pepper Potts, smart and resourceful. Scarlet Witch, smart, powerful, and resourceful, and the list goes on. Maybe Darcy wasn't treated with the reverence she deserved, but she's Darcy, and while I like Kat Dennings, her and Jane's absence from Thor isn't an issue. But folks, I apologize for the interruption. The Russo brothers did it with Avengers Endgame, in a head-scratching sequence that broke away from a key battle to show the franchise's many female heroes, some of whom not only don't have any lines in the film, as they line up, charge forth, and look vaguely powerful while they do it. Now another superhero franchise is getting in on the action, as Simon Kinberg's Dark Phoenix includes its own hammy jab about renaming the mutant team to X-Women, one that Fox has apparently been pleased with enough to release it as its own standalone clip before the film even hits theaters. The same issue this writer leveled at Endgame applies here. The scene doesn't add anything to the film as a whole, nor does it expand on the characters themselves, and their roles in earlier movies prove they have more to offer, even as the franchise has lagged when it comes to crafting films explicitly about many female characters. The clip pulls from a sequence that appears relatively early in the film after the X-Men, X-People, X-Humans, X-Mutants, have taken on challenging spacebound missions in which all of them, men and women, have worked towards a positive outcome. Still, as the mission reaches its critical moment, Jean Grey, Sophie Turner, embarks on a daring task in hopes of salvaging both her team and the people they've been sent to save. It works, but she's also hit with a powerful amount of energy that ultimately turns her into Dark Phoenix. Jean has undoubtedly contributed a lot to the mission, but so has the rest of the team. And if there's one thing that the X-Men movies have been able to nail consistently, it's the importance of a team effort. But the effects of that weird energy have not emerged, and yet the incident is enough to push Raven, Jennifer Lawrence, to spout off to Dr. Charles Xavier that women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to X-Women. It's a scene that has little to do with the film as a whole, the scenes that have come before it, or even the very franchise it exists within. It's a moment meant to elicit cheers from its audience, but so disconnected from the movie and the mood at a Monday event press screening, it was mostly met with groans. While Dark Phoenix as a whole has some serious problems, the film has been savaged by critics and currently holds a 21% rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, making it the lowest rated film in the franchise, it actually succeeds at building a story around women that doesn't need to otherwise hit its audience over the head with yet more, look, women signifiers. The film itself is female-centric in more constructive ways. It follows the arc of female superhero Turner, who falls under the sway of a female villain, Jessica Chastain, and whose most defining act within the film involves another female superhero. That doesn't stop weaker lines pointing to the way the film is about being a woman. At one point, Jean is admonished for letting her emotions control her, cribbing from a similar scene in Captain Marvel that also seemed needless. But it does show how easy it can be to center female characters in the age of superhero supremacy. So why are so many big-budget blockbusters unable to escape the pandering? In search of some perspective from female filmmakers, Dark Phoenix was both written and directed by Kinberg. IndieWire turned to a rising horror filmmaker, Roxanne Benjamin. Any senior dialogue has to come from the motivation of the character to feel true, no matter what the subject. If it doesn't, the audience can sense it. And yes, it's cheap. Recalling a similar moment in Avengers Endgame, Benjamin added, "The hey, look, here are all the girls' characters fighting together. Look, girls" moment has the biggest eye roll for me. It felt like they were doing so well not drawing attention to that and just having real female characters as part of the team. Why did you have to call attention to them and make it feel like they won a special pat on the head medal? Dark Phoenix is guilty of the same thing. The X-Men team, including most of its visible female members like Raven, Jean, and Storm, have all just participated in a key mission. We've just seen them perform at the best of their abilities, using their mutant talents to save a bunch of innocent people and presumably avert a bigger disaster. There are, of course, more consequences to come for Jean and Raven, but that's not in the scene, and that's not yet part of either character's motivations. So why is this still in the movie? Future blockbusters, take note. I agree with the sentiment of this writer, and this is where I want to tie in my opener about X-Men figures. The women of X-Men and good female superheroes in general have one thing in common. They're good characters first. Their gender isn't their defining trait, and when a character is good, people want merchandise based off them. I'm excited to buy Storm. Rogue was my grail piece for a while, and once they release a new Jean Grey, sign me up. I'm not alone in this, as Storm is the only figure of the 12 that is sold out. But it's not just about toys, it's about great characters. That's something these filmmakers forget. They're so focused on winning points from ideology-obsessed internet denizens that the products suffer. They suffer at the box office, they also damage the brand. It makes me wonder if studios will focus on creating quality female characters or continue to flirt with the weirdos online that don't buy anything. This sort of pushback isn't new from female writers. In our first Captain Marvel video, you know, the one that got over 2.1 million views, humble brag, we discussed the call for less idealized female characters and more realistic ones. If you look at that article, then you look at the new one from IndieWire that calls for less pandering, you see that people gravitate towards real and shy away from the fake. Now you're probably saying to yourself, but what about Captain Marvel? $1 billion at the box office? You can't deny that. That's true, I can't. But I can also point you to the fact that no other film has had so much controversy surrounding its box office. No other film has been so protected. No other film is still being used to antagonize fans to try to send a message. In a recent Reddit AMA, Victoria Alonso, the Kathleen Kennedy of Captain Marvel, i.e. the executive producer, had this to say about Captain Marvel's backlash. We were aware that people were not ready, or perhaps not welcoming of the film, but it never interfered with the storyline or our vision of the film. When you make stories that could potentially touch an international audience, there will always be a portion of the audience that does not 100% love it, but we hope they give us a chance and see the film before they finalize their opinions. There is something for everyone in our films, even if you're a little reluctant to watch. First off, let me address the dumbest thing this woman has said. We hope they give us a chance to see the film before they finalize their opinions. Why would anyone live by that? The studio already has your money at that point. Your opinion is irrelevant to them. That's a veiled way of saying, your opinion is valid once you pay us, but we still don't care. No, ma'am. I don't like that. Not one bit. You got a clear enough picture from Captain Marvel before it came out. Captain Marvel made its money because of 6 letters. M-A-R-V-E-L. And it wasn't the Captain part. The Marvel brand is the strongest thing in entertainment today, and there hasn't been a failure at the box office from them yet. Acting like Brie Larson or the hype from this film is what brought in the $1 billion is a lie. Captain Marvel was the penultimate film in the MCU, which is effectively done post-Endgame. Save the Spider-Man comments. Thank you very much. Alonso's AMA not only showed us that she's after one thing, your money, it also showed you how out of touch she truly is. This woman believes that the name X-Men is outdated. This is what she had to say. I don't know where the future is going, Alonso told Nuke the Fridge when promoting the Captain Marvel home release. It's funny that people call it the X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in the X-Men group, so I think it's outdated. It's so nice knowing that Alonso speaks for every woman and that the world is ready to change the name of the X-Men to X-People or something or other, but that's not true. The Mary Sue of all places had an article that shuts down the X-Men name being outdated. Is this a red letter date in the history of the fandom menace agreeing with the Mary Sue? Hell no. Just listen to this. Marvel should focus on writing women before asking if the name X-Men is outdated. Maybe I'm part of the problem, but I have no issue with the name X-Men. I don't think it's exclusionary. A product of its time, maybe. But when I have problems with Marvel, the name on the team doesn't pop up. However, a Marvel producer recently expressed an issue with it, and for once, I don't necessarily agree with them. And while I'm all for making things less men-centric, I wonder why. This strikes me as a very odd comment because it's not like Marvel is famous for its female-centric storytelling. There have been glimpses of brilliance in the way the MCU has crafted women. The Winter Soldier is Natasha at her best. Nebula has a stirring character arc. The women of Black Panther, especially Shuri and Okoye, are standouts in a practically perfect film. No, Black Panther's not practically perfect or even close to it. It's good, but perfect is stretching it. Of course, there's Carol Danvers and the girl power vibe that rocked Captain Marvel, but in between these examples, the rep tends to be more hit and miss, even with some of the characters who I've listed depending on who's writing them. Fans and critics were divided on Marvel's big empowerment moment in Avengers Endgame, which every female character in the battle joined together to help Carol get the Infinity Gauntlet across the field. Some found the moment incredibly empowering. How can you find that empowering? While others thought it was pandering to the highest degree. Because it was. While I liked the moment personally, that's no surprise to me, Alonso's comment about the name of the X-Men being outdated feels a little more like pandering. There's no real issue with the X-Men team having men in the name. The team has always featured strong, empowered women throughout the comics' history. That's not the problem. The problem is the writers who don't know how to write women, making them tokens, minimizing their accomplishments, and making their stories center around the men in their lives. Assistant editor Princess Weeks. Princess? I don't even care anymore. I'm done with the Mary Sue. So it looks like we have a schism on that side of the fandom. Looks like Marvel may progress themselves out of an audience if they try too hard. The name X-Men is an institution. Hollywood, I have something to say to you. Now that the audience you're so desperate to court, the audience with no interest in buying your products but wants to talk about it and mold it to their liking has turned their backs on you, what's next? Disappointment. Speaking of disappointments, Scott Mendelson. You know, if you say his name 3 times, he'll appear. Let's try it. Scott Mendelson. Scott Mendelson. Scott Mendelson. Shit. He's got an article putting this catastrophe called Dark Phoenix into perspective, and for once, Scott isn't the worst part of his work. Let's check it out. Box office, X-Men Dark Phoenix bombs with catastrophic $14 million Friday. 19 years ago, X-Men kickstarted with a little help from Spawn and Blade. Wait, we now acknowledge Blade since Black Panther's over and done with? Thanks. The modern comic book superhero movie boomed with a $20 million opening day. Last night, Dark Phoenix ended the franchise with a whimper, earning just $14 million on its first day. That translates to an $8 million opening day in ticket prices the day Bryan Singer's X-Men opened in theaters. Generally speaking, a movie scoring $14 million in a single day wouldn't exactly be a disaster in the making. But when you're dealing with a poorly reviewed franchise title whose initial installment opened with $20 million 19 years ago, sans any 3D or IMAX boost, yeah, that's a loss. Dark Phoenix scored the lowest opening day for an X-Men movie in franchise history. Yes, even lower than the unfairly derided at the time $20 million Friday for The Wolverine. Barring a miracle, this is going to open below The Wolverine, X-Men, and X-Men First Class, to nab the lowest Friday to Sunday debut in X-Men history. I don't care that it isn't the top movie of the day or even the weekend. The Secret Life of Pets 2, which didn't exactly hit pay dirt last night either, was always going to win the weekend. But the numbers at play are tragic. What we're seeing is not a somewhat disappointing series finale for the 19-year-old and never outright rebooted X-Men series, but a performance relatively on par with Fantastic Four back in 2015. If you recall, Fantastic Four was projected to open with $40 million in August of 2015. But poor This Movie Is Bad and Not Fun For You or Your Kids reviews, an overestimation of the public's appetite for the Fantastic Four brand, and director Josh Trank infamously trashing the compromised theatrical cut on Twitter before opening day, led to a $25.7 million launch. The other factor, which I've been warning about for years, is the choice to redo a comic book arc that has been already done in movie form. Hardcore fans may have wanted a second go at the Phoenix Saga, but general audiences already saw it play out with X-Men The Last Stand, which sold more tickets domestically than any X-Men film save for Deadpool. It didn't help that everyone knew that the franchise was going to be rebooted into the MCU after Disney's purchase of Fox. To be fair, had the movie been better received, or offered something new, that would have been mere trivia, or a fact in its favor. Logan would have still thrived under the shadow of such news. Folks didn't show up for Dark Phoenix because they didn't want to see Dark Phoenix and the mere prospect of, another X-Men movie, with this cast/continuity, wasn't itself an event. Comparatively speaking, audiences didn't think it looked good, and the reviews confirmed that it wasn't very good. The X-Men brand is much less of a big deal than when it was in the early days, when it was among the only games in town. So, a terrible film is failing, and to sell it, they're making fun of the people who would probably give this movie a pity watch? Smooth move, Hollywood. Smooth move. Look, I could sit here and talk about why entertainment is as bad as it is. Mainly because the people in charge want to teach us something that we need to learn instead of entertaining us, and it's backfiring. Dark Phoenix isn't going to fail because of a girl power faux pas, but it's going to fail because it sucks. And Hollywood can't blame the trolls or the bots this time. That's refreshing. In the future, I hope they, Hollywood, take a page out of their own playbook and write women characters more realistic, like they used to. It's sad that a good film like Endgame is remembered for its heavy-handed girl power scene, but that's what happened when executives get involved and use social media as representation of actual society. I doubt Hollywood will get the message and will be bombarded by more of these heavy-handed pushes towards something that's already been achieved, and the movies won't be remembered fondly or remembered at all. It sounds cold, but these were the choices Hollywood made, and now they have to live with them. One final note before I go. Check out the super duper popular Captain Marvel action figures. They look awesome, don't they? Well, they're on clearance already. But I thought Captain Marvel took the world by storm. Sorry. Excuse the pun. So that's it for today. Isn't it funny? Isn't it ironic? Isn't it just satisfying knowing that the people who try to make entertainment too politicized or too idealized are eating each other apart? It's like these studios can't win. Well, this movie's progressive, this movie's too progressive, and the opposite sides fight each other. It's almost like Hollywood should focus on making a story that crosses age, race, religion, gender, and just, you know what, focuses on telling a good story. Kind of like the original Star Wars. Well, Star Wars isn't sacred, they had to remake it in 2015, and you've heard us talk about that, so that's enough for today. But X-Men, I know the brand isn't what it used to be, and I'm a big X-Men fan, and even I didn't go see this film, and I probably won't go see this film. X-Men Apocalypse sucked. It was a terrible movie, maybe the worst X-Men film, and this one looked to follow suit. But what I like is listening to these political pundits argue about one thing that they want in these movies, and another side arguing what they don't want, and Hollywood just can't win. It brings a flutter to my heart knowing that people out there realize how cringy the girl power moment in Avengers was, and that people are awake to this stuff. These hollow attempts to win diversity points or ideology points just doesn't work. Like I said, back in the day, they would do research, they knew their audiences. Somehow, some way, they forgot, they being Hollywood, pronouns pal, they forgot about who pays their bills, the fans. And the fans deserve better, you guys deserve better, and that's where we come in. So if you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and share it all over social media. Thank you for watching this video, and I always leave you with a message, and it's going to be the same message today because I firmly believe it. Now, there's a lot of turmoil going on online with the fandom MENACE, with people on Twitter. People are always trying to start shit. But I firmly believe if you follow my words, well, they're not even my words exactly, but if you echo the sentiment that I do, I think it'll be a much better situation for all of us. What is it? Well, just go out into the world and be excellent to each other.